Google Ads is changing faster than ever before, and what worked in 2024 or 2025, it's probably not going to work in 2026. So in this video, I want to tell you some of the best Google Ads practices I found out now after working with over 500 e-commerce brands and spending over $75 million on the platform in the last 7 years, what I'm going to be doing going into 2026. The first thing you want to understand, it's sort of a fundamental which has stayed true all this time, is the product feed is the new targeting, the new interest targeting, so to speak, with Google Ads. What you want to understand is as we go into late 2025, early 2026, it's going to be all about artificial intelligence, period. I don't care what anybody says. The entire platform and a lot of these platforms are driving towards AI and robots. That's essentially the reality of the situation. So what that means is a lot of the algorithm now is going to be driven by this AI software, by these robots and ChatGPT shopping and all these things, which means all of your product feed should be more about catering to the robot. Back in the day, you could get away with maybe having 70% of your product feed or any strategy you implement be based around the consumer, be based around emotional things. Whereas now with 2026 and onwards, it should be more of the opposite, where now more of your product feed, more of your strategies are based around the robots, trying to cater to the robot, seeing what's the policies the robot wants in order, what kind of words it's looking for. All these things are that much more important right now because at this point of time, your product feed is literally your targeting. If the certain keywords you use, the certain images even, the algorithm is reading through those, it's analyzing and it's optimizing based around that to show the right audience your product. So the best practice in 2026 with this fundamental in mind is you want to be focused more on the keyword strategies, essentially going after something called the keyword stuffing method, but with natural product titles. Now, back in the day, I used to recommend against this, having a lot of bunch of keywords separated by commas, but going into 2026, you want to implement a form of strategy that is this approach, but not necessarily with a bunch of keywords separated by commas, because still you want to have that human aspect to it, which means a more natural title. But keywords hold a lot more importance. In addition, your backend feed attributes, the GTIN numbers, MPN, color, size, texture, all these things, all these values now hold that much more importance. So the days of just ignoring them and just kind of letting them slide by are officially gone. If you want to scale your brand in 2026 and onwards, this needs to be in check, period. In addition to high quality images, product images is key, not just the main product image now that the users see on the shopping ad sites, but having multiple product images which are all high quality on your landing page, because the algorithm, especially with ChatGPT shopping and everything like that, is crawling through it. It's trying to understand what's the right product and what's the right image and which brand actually spent time developing good product images versus the brand that just threw something up from AliExpress or Alibaba. So these things hold that much importance because in 2026, the brands that win are the brands who treat their product feed as their number one ad creative. In meta ads, you have the ad creative with a video or image, same with TikTok. With Google, your ad creative is your product feed at this point of time. Second thing you want to keep in mind is now the algorithm and just the best practice is now leading towards campaign simplified approaches, campaign simplification, as I like to call it, because over segmentation, you want to leave that back in 2025, or you should have already left that back in 2024 in that situation. But essentially over segmentation of your products, trying to overdo things just to showcase each product, just to have some sort of strategy, so to speak, in place is the bad way to go about it essentially in 2026. Because what you want to understand now and going into 2026 is the algorithm learns faster with consolidated campaigns and higher budgets. You don't want to spread your budget out too thin and spread your data out too thin as a result. Instead, now it's all about consolidation, keeping things a bit more intact so the algorithm can look into those 2 or 3 campaigns you have versus 20 or 30, understand what the right audiences from those 2 or 3 with higher budgets, and allocate more of that budget to the right people versus now you having 50 different campaigns with $20 a day or $10 a day each campaign and nothing gets tested properly. you want to keep this best practice in mind and have fewer number of campaigns, maybe 5 to 10 maximum campaigns within an account. And I'll tell you from experience, because I work now with over 20 to 25 brands at any given time handling Google Ads for them, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads. Go onto my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But the best practices I'm seeing right now that I'm already implementing going into 26 onwards is to have a select few campaigns, ideally 5 to 10, high buying intent campaigns, mixture of PMAX, centered shopping, search, sometimes even YouTube. But this approach account structure more than enough to scale beyond 6 and even 7 figures per month in revenue. Because what you want to understand is the lesser stuff you have going on, the less clutter you have within the accounts, the faster the algorithm will learn and the stronger the scale will be. Third thing you want to keep in mind is the budget distribution and bidding strategy. The best practice for this, again, goes down to feeding the algorithm with smart budget allocation, basically by not spreading your budget too thin and rather to double down on what's already working. I know it's tempting to try different things out, especially if things are doing well. You have more room now to actually try stuff, but you want to kind of refrain from that, and you want to only do things in a systematic way, absolutely if needed. And when it comes to actually budget restrictions, bidding restrictions, you want to use any of these things only after data maturity, starting with a bidding strategy that's a little bit broader, maybe even no restrictions at all, letting the algorithm stabilize around this, and then introducing restrictions based on the data coming in. But you want to always keep track of your blended return on ad spend and your blended metrics versus just the in-platform metrics you see, meaning the ROAS you see on the Google Ads dashboard. Because a lot of the times, if you have an external app like Triple Whale, Hyros, etc., you'll see very different numbers compared to what's are actually visible on the platform side of things. So just keep that in mind and make decisions according to real data, not just arbitrary numbers thrown your way. Fourth thing you want to understand is the audience signals and AI influence in that manner and the best practice around this. So it's no joke that AI is the future. It's just gonna keep getting more and more and more smarter over time. So with the AI evolving, you want to now lean harder into audience plus creative signals. That's the number one thing you should be focusing on. And with best practices around this, you want to basically be focused on custom intent audiences like competitors, category searches, all these things. You want to submit as external data in the backend within your Google Ads account. In addition, you want to have feed data. If you have like a YouTube channel, incorporate that feed data, the list you have on there, or just connecting your YouTube channel to the Google Ads accounts and to your remarketing. That's another powerful play you can implement as a best practice to continue feeding the right data to all of your campaigns and to basically improve your ROI as a result. But constantly refreshing your asset groups, especially within PMAX if you're using like videos and imagery, or even if you're running search ads or YouTube ads or demand gen. The goal here is to refresh your creatives constantly, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. I don't recommend you do more than that because then it'll be overloading the campaigns, and that's not an ideal approach with AI in place. So just make sure to refresh them with different kinds of interests, different kinds of approaches that fit your audience and that fit your criteria of what your customers are looking for. It's all about relevancy at the end of the day. But in addition, the fifth thing you want to understand with this best practices is the creative testing. In terms of Google Ads, there's not a lot of creatives you could be testing besides the PMAX asset groups, YouTube, demand gen, search, but you don't want to ignore this either. The best practice going into 2026 and onwards is to rotate the ad copies that you have, the ad creatives within search, within the PMAX asset groups again regularly. That's one of the key things, and to test more on the emotion side for the user, because even though this is all artificial intelligence based, at the end of the day, a real person will read your ad. So you want to keep that in mind, and you want to still incorporate those emotional factors and whatnot into everything that you do. And essentially the main things to keep in mind is you want to treat it as meta ads, but optimized for search intent, because that's essentially what the creatives aspect is. Now, moving on to the second to the last best practice and the fundamentals around it is scaling the right way. The best practice for scaling in 2026 and onwards is not just going to be vertical scaling. The easiest way that most brand owners go about it is they scale their budgets, increasing budgets, decreasing restrictions, but that no longer is just the only viable option. Instead, you want to be also heavily focused on horizontal scaling. Instead of just pumping budgets, expand to new SKUs in winning product categories. Add more of those products already winning, more winning SKUs, so on and so forth. Expand your geos, going from United States to Canada to UK to other European European countries. All these things, these are what will give your brand a competitive edge, along with testing new audience signals. And the best way to do this is to use the auction insights section or just the insights tab within your Google Ads dashboard to figure out what's working and what's not, and to do more of what's already working. But final thing you want to do in terms of best practices around data and tracking. 2026, there's zero tolerance for poor tracking. If your brand does not have proper tracking in place, you need to get that fixed right now. Because in 2026, with things moving towards AI can only work as good as your fundamentals are. If your foundation is weak, conversion tracking's off, there's no product feed strategies in place, it's just not going to work, period. So getting proper tracking in place and implementing external tracking devices like maybe Hyros, Triple Whale softwares that can help you track alongside the Google Ads in-platform numbers. These are key things you want to be doing with Google Ads. But in conclusion, 2026 is just the year of change as we have come to see it so far. And that's what you want to approach it with. You want to be adaptable. You want to be approaching it with the mindset of, hey, we're going to improve things. We're going to change things as needed, because that's where the brands that do well will excel. And if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue and need some extra help scaling to the next level with the Google Ads, go on to my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.